The morning after the blizzard, Darius Cole came downstairs expecting silence. That was what his house had been for 2 years. Silent in the way that only grief can make a place silent, where even the refrigerator hum feels too loud, and the creak of the floorboard sounds like an accusation. He expected the cold kitchen, the empty counter, the particular loneliness of making coffee for one while his daughter slept upstairs. He did not expect the smell of butter and warm batter. He did not expect to hear Naomi laughing. And he absolutely did not expect to find a woman standing at his stove, a stranger, wearing his old blue flannel shirt like she'd always lived there, flour on her wrists, cocoa steaming on the table. His 8-year-old daughter pressed against her side like she'd found something she hadn't realized she was missing. The woman turned around. She looked at him the way people look at someone they've been waiting for. Then she said quietly, with a kind of certainty that made no sense at all, "Your daughter told me her mother sent me here." Darius forgot how to breathe. If this kind of story is your thing, slow reel, the kind that stays with you, you might want to hit subscribe before we go any further. There's a lot more where this came from. Darius Cole was not a man who asked for much. He asked for a steady paycheck, a warm house, and enough hours in the day to pack Naomi's lunch, drop her at school, and still make it to his shift without running a red light. Before, when he'd worked as a maintenance engineer at a mid-size manufacturing plant in the city, those things had been enough. He had Renee. He had a life that made sense. Then Renee got sick. Then Renee was gone. And the life that had made sense came apart so quietly that Darius barely noticed until he was already standing in the wreckage of it. He moved Naomi out of the city 14 months after the funeral. The house in Maple Creek had belonged to his uncle, wood-framed, drafty in winter, tucked at the edge of a tree line where the road narrowed to a single lane. It was not a practical choice, but Darius had stopped making practical choices the day he watched his wife take her last breath. He wanted quiet. He wanted somewhere that didn't have her ghost on every corner. What he hadn't counted on was how much of the quiet would hurt. Naomi was 8 years old and carried her grief the way children do sideways in the things she didn't say. She'd always been a talker, a laugher, the kind of kid who narrated her own cereal eating. After Renee died, she went still. Not broken, not withdrawn in a way that alarmed her teachers, but quieter than she should have been. She drew constantly. Always the same subject, a house with 3 figures standing in front of it. 2 had faces, the third never did. Darius had asked her about it once. Naomi just said she wasn't done yet. He hadn't asked again. Celeste Monroe did not look like a woman who got lost. She had the kind of face that appeared on the covers of business magazines, sharp, composed, arranged into an expression of permanent competence. As CEO of Monroe Haven Group, she oversaw a portfolio that included 4 boutique hotel brands, a high-end bakery chain with locations in 11 cities, and 2 eco-resort properties. She was, by every external measure, a woman who knew exactly where she was going and precisely how long it would take to get there. Her assistant, Adrian Wells, kept it that way. Adrian had been with her for 6 years, long enough to know which board members needed flattering, which journalists needed managing, and which of Celeste's silences meant, "Give me a moment" versus "Get me out of this room." He built her schedule the way a contractor builds a load-bearing wall. Nothing wasted, nothing soft, no room for anything unplanned. He was also the only person close enough to see what the rest of the world missed, that behind the composure, Celeste Monroe was running on empty, and had been for longer than either of them acknowledged out loud. What neither of them had planned for was black ice on Route 9 at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night, a company car fishtailing into a ditch, and a cell signal that simply ceased to exist. Celeste stood beside the car in the dark, her coat soaked through her heels, useless in the snow, her phone showing 1 bar that came and went like a cruel joke. She had left the venue early, the press event, the announcement, the handshakes, and the cameras, because for the first time in years, she had felt the specific, suffocating sensation of not being able to breathe inside her own life. She had not expected to end up stranded on a forest road in the middle of nowhere. She had not expected anyone to stop. Darius almost didn't see her. He was driving slow, the snow was coming down thick, and the road back from the hardware store was barely visible when his headlights caught the shape of a car half buried in the ditch and a figure standing beside it. He pulled over without thinking. In Maple Creek, you pulled over. That was just what people did. She looked up when his truck door opened. Even in the dark, even soaked through and shivering, there was something composed about her. Like she was embarrassed to be caught like this, but refused to show it. "You need a ride?" he asked. "My phone has no signal," she said. "I just need to call someone." "Signal doesn't come back until you're closer to town." He nodded toward the passenger seat. "I've got heat." She hesitated exactly 2 seconds. Then she got in. She told him her name was Celeste. She told him she'd been at an event nearby and had taken the wrong turn trying to leave early. She didn't tell him anything else, and Darius didn't push. He'd learned in the long, quiet months since Renee died that people tell you what they need to tell you and keep the rest for themselves. He respected that. Back at the house, he found her dry clothes, an old flannel shirt, a pair of sweatpants she had to roll at the waist, and heated up the leftover soup from dinner. She sat at the kitchen table and ate without ceremony, her shoulders slowly dropping from where they'd been locked up around her ears. Darius gave her the spare room, told her the roads would be clearer by morning, and went to bed. He didn't expect to think about her again before then. He didn't expect to hear Naomi's laughter before the sun was fully up. The smell reached him first. Butter batter. Something sweet and warm that had no business being in this house on a Tuesday morning. He stood at the top of the stairs and listened before he went down. The voices already familiar enough to place Naomi's high and bright, the other woman's lower, unhurried. When he finally came around the corner, he stopped. Celeste was at the stove in his old blue flannel shirt, a dish towel over her shoulder, pouring batter into the pan with the focused expression of someone who had decided that this was the most important task in the world right now. Naomi was beside her on the step stool, the one Darius had bought so she could reach the counter with flour on both hands and cocoa steaming in a mug in front of her. The scene hit him somewhere below the ribs. It looked like something that used to exist in this house, something he had stopped believing was possible. Then Celeste turned around and saw him, and something shifted in her expression, not guilt, not surprise, but something quieter and harder to name. She looked at him steadily and said, "Your daughter told me her mother sent me here." Darius felt the air leave his body. "She's 8, he said, and he heard how flat his voice came out, how much work it was taking to keep it level. "She says things." "I know," Celeste said. She didn't argue with him, didn't push. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it like that." But Naomi had turned around on the step stool, and she was looking at her father with an expression so certain it made his chest ache. "I told her," Naomi said simply, "because it's true. Last night I dreamed about Mama. She was smiling." Darius didn't have an answer for that. He stood in the doorway of his own kitchen and did not have a single answer for any of it. He noticed the watch first. It was a small thing she kept pulling her sleeve down over it, a reflex so practiced it was almost invisible. But Darius had spent 15 years fixing machines for a living, and he noticed small things. He noticed the way she held her phone when the signal finally came back like she was bracing for impact. He noticed that she didn't call anyone, she just looked at the screen for a long moment, then set it face down on the table. He noticed that the car in the ditch had been a late-model sedan, the kind that came with a driver. He didn't say anything. He made breakfast, let Naomi chatter at Celeste about her drawings, and told himself it wasn't his business. Then the black SUVs appeared at the end of his driveway. There were 2 of them moving slow on the icy road, and they stopped just past the gate with the kind of deliberate patience that made Darius think of people who were used to waiting without being asked to. A man got out of the first vehicle, tall, early 40s, dressed in a coat that was too good for the weather, and carrying a phone in each hand. He walked to the edge of the property line and stopped there. Darius watched from the kitchen window. "You know him?" Celeste had gone very still. "Yes. He with the event you were at last night." A pause. "He's my assistant." The man outside raised one hand and said clearly enough to carry through the glass, "Ms. Monroe." The name landed in the kitchen like something dropped from a height. Darius turned from the window and looked at her. Really looked at her the way he hadn't let himself since she'd climbed into his truck the night before. He'd caught enough of the radio on his drives to work over the past week to know the name Monroe Haven Group, the hotels, the high-end bakeries, the woman who'd reportedly walked out of a major press event and gone quiet. He hadn't paid close attention at the time. Now the pieces arranged themselves without his permission. She met his eyes and didn't look away. She didn't apologize either. She just waited. "You were running," he said. "I was leaving," she said. "There's a difference." He wasn't sure there was, but he let it go. Adrian Wells, because that was his name, Darius would learn it later, remained at the property line with the patience of a man who had rearranged his entire life around someone else's schedule and made a certain peace with it. He didn't come to the door. He didn't demand. He simply waited, 2 phones in hand, the embodiment of a world that was not going to disappear just because Celeste was standing in a stranger's kitchen in a borrowed flannel shirt. Darius looked at his daughter. Naomi was watching the man outside with curious eyes, her half-eaten pancake forgotten. Then she looked up at her father and said very quietly, "Is she leaving?" And that was the whole question laid out plain by an 8-year-old who had already lost one person and knew exactly what it felt like when someone walked out of a room for the last time. Darius looked at Celeste. She was watching him, not the man outside, not her phone, just him. "She can stay until the roads are clear," he said. Adrian Wells did not come inside. He moved his SUV to the side of the road, made a series of calls, and settled into the driver's seat with the resigned efficiency of a man who had long ago accepted that his job description included waiting in cars in bad weather. He was a presence without being an intrusion, a reminder parked at the edge of Darius's property that the world Celeste had come from was not going anywhere. Inside, the morning moved at a different pace. Naomi took Celeste to see her drawings after breakfast. The whole collection spread across the low table in the living room. Darius stood in the doorway and watched. He had expected Celeste to do what most adults did with children's art: nod, smile, say something generic and move on. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the floor, picked up each drawing carefully, and actually looked at them. She asked real questions, not the performed kind, but the kind that meant she was paying attention. Naomi answered every question with the seriousness it deserved. It was when she got to the drawings of the house with 3 figures that Celeste went quiet. She held one for a long moment, looking at the 2 faces and the blank oval where the third should have been. She didn't ask about it. She just set it down gently and moved to the next one. That restraint, knowing what not to ask, undid something in Darius that he hadn't been aware was wound so tight. Later, while Naomi napped, he found Celeste in the kitchen making bread. Not from a recipe she'd looked up, she just knew how her hands moving through the motions with a comfort that surprised him. "You do this often?" he asked. "I used to," she said, "before the company got big enough that everything I did became a brand decision." She pressed the heel of her hand into the dough. "My grandmother had a bakery. I grew up in her kitchen on weekends. It was the only place I ever felt like I could just be slow." Darius thought about that. "And now?" She looked up at him. "Now I have 17 people whose job it is to make sure I'm never slow." The afternoon was dangerous in the way that quiet things are dangerous gradually without announcement. Naomi showed Celeste how she organized her colored pencils by temperature warm shades on the left, cool on the right. Celeste showed Naomi how to shape dough into small rolls. They argued cheerfully about whether Naomi's creation was a star or a dog. Darius sat at the kitchen table pretending to read something on his phone and not reading anything. He was watching his daughter lean into Celeste's side without thinking about it, the way you lean into warmth. He was feeling 2 things at exactly the same time: gratitude so sharp it was almost painful, and fear so quiet it was almost indistinguishable from grief. He had learned in the last 2 years that hope was not a safe thing. Hope was the thing that made the loss real. Hope was what turned an empty chair into a wound. And across the kitchen his daughter was laughing the way she used to laugh, full and unconsidered and completely unguarded. Darius looked out the window and thought, "She is going to leave." He thought, I need to remember that before Naomi does. That evening after Naomi was in bed, Celeste found him in the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. Adrian asked me something today, she said, when I went out to talk to him. He asked if I was running away or running towards something. She paused. I didn't have an answer. Darius looked at her. Do you have one now? She held his gaze for a moment. I'm starting to think those two things might not be as different as I thought. He didn't respond, but he didn't look away either. The drawing appeared on the kitchen table the next evening. Darius found it after dinner while Celeste was washing dishes and Naomi had gone upstairs. It was face up on the table, positioned where he would see it. He stood over it for a moment without picking it up. The house was the same, the tree in its usual spot. Naomi and Darius in the front, same as always. But the third figure had a face now. It was Celeste, unmistakably in the particular way children draw people they've studied closely. The hair pulled back, the borrowed flannel shirt rendered in careful blue pencil strokes. A tray of something small and round balanced in both hands. She was standing beside Darius, not behind him, not separate, beside him, as if she had always been there. Darius picked up the drawing and stood there holding it longer than he meant to. When Naomi came back downstairs for her glass of water, she found her father still at the table. You don't like it, she said. I didn't say that. You have your thinking face. He set the drawing down carefully. Naomi, Celeste is someone we just met. You can't put someone you just met in the family picture. She's not in the family picture. She's in a picture of our house. People can be at our house without being family. He almost let it go. But then he thought about tomorrow and what happened when Celeste got in that SUV and drove back to her real life, and he said, I just don't want you to get attached to someone who isn't staying. Naomi looked at him. Her expression was not angry. It was something older than anger. Mama said that, she said quietly. Darius went still. What? Before she went to the hospital the last time. She talked to me at night. She said that sometimes people come into your life and they feel like they belong there. She said when that happens, you don't have to be scared. Her voice dropped to just above a whisper. She said if someone comes who makes me laugh again, you shouldn't send them away. The kitchen was completely silent. You never told me that, he said. You never asked. He didn't have anything to say to that. He sat with it, the weight of it, the particular cruelty of being handed something precious 2 years too late and also exactly on time. Celeste appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had clearly heard enough to know she had walked into something. She looked at Darius, then at Naomi, then at the drawing on the table. She did not speak. Naomi picked up her water glass and looked at her father one more time. I'm not trying to replace Mama, she said with a clarity that broke his heart clean in two. I just don't want our house to be quiet forever. She went upstairs. The drawing stayed on the table between Darius and Celeste like something that had been said aloud and could not be unsaid. After a long moment, Celeste pulled out a chair and sat down. She didn't offer comfort. She didn't fill the silence. She just stayed. Darius was beginning to understand that this just staying was exactly the thing he had no defense against. The next morning was the kind of morning that made it easy to forget the rest of the world existed. The snow had stopped. The light coming through the kitchen windows was pale and clean. Naomi was at the table doing a puzzle. Celeste had made coffee without being asked, found the mugs on the first try, and was standing at the counter with her hands wrapped around one like she'd done it 100 times before. After Naomi went to put her boots on for her morning walk, Celeste set her mug down and looked at Darius. I want to tell you something before I go back, she said. He waited. I'm going to deal with the board, restructure some things, end some arrangements I should have ended a long time ago. I'm going to hand Adrian actual authority instead of just the appearance of it, and I'm going to stop building my schedule around other people's expectations. She said it plainly, without drama. And when I've done all of that, I'd like to come back. Not for a visit. I'd like to come back and see if what I think is happening here is actually happening. What do you think is happening here? He asked. She looked at him steadily. Something I haven't felt before. He looked at the drawing still on the table. At the puzzle pieces Naomi had left in careful rows. He thought about what Naomi had said, "I don't want our house to be quiet forever." And he thought about how much of him wanted to say yes. And then he thought about what came after yes. He thought about cameras at the end of his driveway instead of one patient assistant. He thought about Celeste's name in headlines next to his. He thought about Naomi getting attached, building another person into the architecture of her world, and then one day watching that person become someone she used to know. "You should go back," he said. His voice came out level. He'd had practice keeping his voice level. "Do all of that. It sounds like things you should do for yourself, not because of 2 days in somebody's house in the middle of nowhere." Celeste went very still. "That's not what I said." "I know." He met her eyes. "But it's what I'm saying. You've got a whole world waiting for you. I've got a kid who's finally starting to laugh again. I don't think it's a good idea for those two things to get tangled up." She was quiet for a long moment. "You're not protecting me," she said finally. "You know that." "Maybe not, but I'm protecting her." She looked down at the drawing, at her own likeness in blue pencil standing in front of a house that wasn't hers. She didn't argue. That was the thing about Celeste Monroe that Darius had not expected she didn't perform. When she was hurt, she didn't weaponize it. She just absorbed it and stood with it the way someone stands in weather they can't change. "Okay," she said quietly. She went upstairs to get her things. She came back down in her own clothes, the flannel shirt folded over her arm. Darius looked at it. "You can keep that." She looked at him for a moment, something unreadable moving across her face. Then she nodded. Naomi was back by then, cheeks red from the cold. She looked at Celeste's coat and her bag and understood immediately. "Are you coming back?" she asked. Celeste crouched down to Naomi's level. She didn't make promises she couldn't guarantee. She just said, "I hope so. And I want you to know that these 2 days were some of the best I've had in a really long time." Naomi nodded, serious. Then she hugged her quick and fierce and stepped back. Outside, Adrian opened the rear door of the sous vide without a word. But as Celeste walked past Darius on the porch, Adrian looked up and met Darius's eyes across the yard. It was a brief look, not unkind, that said with the eloquence of a man who had watched Celeste Monroe make difficult choices for 6 years, "You just let something important leave." Darius looked away first. The SUV pulled out slowly. Naomi stood beside her father and watched until it disappeared into the tree line. The house behind them was already quiet again. The week after Celeste left, Darius fixed the broken hinge on the back door. He'd been meaning to do it for months. He also re-caulked the bathroom window, replaced the cracked tile by the stove, and spent an entire Saturday repainting the fence posts along the driveway. He worked the way he always worked when something was wrong, methodically with his hands, fixing the things that could be fixed so he wouldn't have to think about the things that couldn't. Naomi didn't say much. She went to school, came home, did her homework. She still drew, but she took her sketchbook upstairs now instead of leaving her work spread across the living room table. Darius didn't ask to see what she was drawing. He told himself he was giving her space. He knew if he was honest that he was giving himself space instead. The house wasn't silent the way it had been before Celeste. It was a different kind of quiet, not the flat, settled quiet of a life that has learned to exist without something, but the alert, waiting quiet of a life that knows something is missing and hasn't decided what to do about it yet. 3 weeks after she left, he heard the news sideways from someone else's conversation. He was at the hardware store when Gerald, the owner, mentioned that Monroe Haven Group was reportedly opening some kind of small operation out in the Maple Creek area. Something about a boutique community concept. "That Monroe woman," Gerald said. "The CEO. You see, she stepped back from some of her responsibilities. Adrian Wells is running day-to-day operations now." "That right?" Darius said. It was not a question. He drove home in silence and assembled it into the most logical shape he could find. Celeste had done what she said she was going to do. She had reorganized her company. She had handed Adrian real authority. And now Monroe Haven was expanding into Maple Creek because that was what companies like hers did. They identified underserved markets, they moved in quietly. They built something profitable in places people weren't expecting. It had nothing to do with him. She had respected his answer and gone back to her life because that was what capable people did. He told himself this every day for the next week, with the focused repetition of someone trying to make something true through sheer insistence. Then Naomi left her sketchbook open on the kitchen table. He didn't mean to look. He was clearing dishes, and it was just there. He looked before he could stop himself. The house was the same. The tree in its spot. Naomi and Darius in the front. The third figure was there in the blue flannel shirt. But she was on the other side of the road now. Not in the yard, not on the porch. Across the road and down the way, small with distance facing toward them, but not moving closer. Darius set the dishes down. He stood in his kitchen for a long time, not moving, not fixing anything, just standing with the particular weight of a man who has made a decision he can no longer convince himself was right. He had kept the door closed to protect everyone inside. He was only now understanding that the person standing out in the cold had chosen to be there, had walked to that spot on her own, had stood there not because she had nowhere else to go, she had everywhere else to go, but because this was where she wanted to be. And he had told her to leave. The bakery opened on a Tuesday. Darius drove past it on the way back from dropping Naomi at school and had to slow down to make sense of what he was seeing. The building had been a vacant insurance office for as long as he could remember, plain forgettable, the kind of storefront that people stopped seeing after a while. Now it had a hand-painted wooden sign above the door, warm light coming through clean windows, and a small chalkboard on the sidewalk that said, "Open," in letters that were slightly uneven, like someone had written them by hand without a stencil. The sign above the door read, "Second Morning Bakery." The smell reached him even through the truck's closed windows. Butter, cinnamon, something yeasty and warm that had no business existing at 7:45 on a weekday morning in Maple Creek. Darius drove home. He did not go in the next day or the day after that. He told himself this was practical. He was aware that none of this was convincing. Naomi had no such reservations. She started mentioning the bakery on the third day, casually at first, then less casually, then on the sixth day with the directness that was her most inherited trait. "It smells like when Celeste made breakfast. I want to go." Darius said they'd go this weekend. He did not anticipate that on Friday afternoon she would walk home from the bus stop past the bakery and simply go inside. He got the call at 3:47 and was there in 4 minutes. He pushed open the door and the bell above it rang a small, clear sound, the kind that belongs in a place that wants you to feel welcomed. The inside was warm and smelled exactly the way Naomi had said it did. Small tables with mismatched chairs. A chalkboard menu in that same slightly uneven handwriting. A glass case with things in it that looked like they had been made that morning by someone who knew what they were doing. Naomi was sitting on a stool at the counter mid-sentence in what appeared to be a fully established conversation. Behind the counter, with her back to the door, was a woman in a cream apron and a simple ponytail. She was sliding something into a paper bag and listening to Naomi with the focused attention of someone for whom this conversation was the most important thing happening in the world. She was wearing a blue flannel shirt under the apron, not because it was the only thing available, not because the night was cold and her clothes were wet. She had put it on this morning in this town, in this bakery she had opened 400 feet from his front door, because she had chosen to. It was a quiet declaration, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but means everything to the person who understands it. The woman turned around. Celeste looked at Darius the way she had looked at him that first morning in his kitchen, steady, unhurried, without apology. Naomi swiveled on her stool and grinned at her father with the uncomplicated satisfaction of someone who had known exactly what she was doing when she walked through that door. Darius stood in the entrance with the cold air coming in behind him and could not find a single word. He let the door close behind him. Naomi read the room and announced she was going to study the chalkboard menu. She moved to the far end of the counter and became very interested in a list of items she had no intention of ordering, leaving the two adults alone in the silence that follows a long time apart. Celeste came around the counter. She stopped a few feet away and looked at him the way she had looked at Naomi's drawings carefully, without pretending she wasn't looking. "You didn't come in," she said. "No. I wondered if you would." "I thought it was a business decision," he said. "Gerald at the hardware store said Monroe Haven was opening something in the area. I thought it was an expansion." Something moved across her face. "It is," she said. "Just not the kind he meant." He looked around the bakery, the mismatched chairs, the handwritten chalkboard, the glass case she had clearly stocked herself. None of it looked like a brand rollout. It looked like something one person had built because they wanted to. "Adrian handled the paperwork," she said. "He was extremely efficient and only said 'I told you so' once, which I consider generous." A small pause. "He also said to tell you that the answer to his question turned out to be the second one, running towards something, not away." Darius was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the road that ran in front of his house, the tree line at the edge of his property, the life he had built around smallness and safety and keeping things contained. "Celeste," he said, "I need you to understand what this looks like from where I'm standing. You have a company, you have a board and a media profile and a life that is enormous. And I have a house that needs work and a kid who draws pictures of people she's afraid to lose. Those are not the same scale." "No," she said, "they're not. So I need to ask you, are you sure?" It came out quieter than he intended. "Not about the bakery. About this. Because I watched Naomi draw your face into that picture, and I know what it costs her when someone leaves. I can't let that happen again unless you're sure." Celeste looked at him for a long moment. "I woke up every morning in my apartment for 3 weeks, she said, and the first thing I thought about was what Naomi put in her cocoa. 2 marshmallows. She was very specific about it. And I thought about that before I thought about my board meeting, before I thought about my inbox, before anything that was supposedly important." She took a step closer. "I'm not here because I'm running from something. I'm here because when I was in your house, I was more myself than I have been in years. And I would like the chance to find out what that means. Slowly, honestly, without either of us pretending it's simpler than it is." Darius stood with that. He thought about Renee. He thought about what Naomi had told him. "If someone comes who makes me laugh again, don't send them away." He thought about the drawing, the figure in the blue flannel shirt across the road, small, with distance, waiting. He had put her there. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You were scared," she said. "So was I." "That's not—" "Darius." Her voice was quiet but certain. "I'm not asking you to be sorry for protecting your daughter. I'm asking you to let me stay long enough to show you that I'm not going to disappear." From the end of the counter, Naomi said without looking up from the chalkboard, "She makes really good cinnamon rolls, Dad." The tension released slowly, like something that had been held too long finally being set down. Darius looked at his daughter. Then he looked at Celeste, standing in her apron and his old flannel shirt, in the bakery she had opened 400 feet from his front door, and he felt something shift in his chest. Not the sharp thing, not the grief-adjacent thing, but something quieter and more durable. He pulled out a stool at the counter and sat down. "I'll take a cinnamon roll," he said. Celeste smiled. Not the composed, camera-ready expression from the magazine covers. Something smaller than that and realer, and it changed her whole face. She went behind the counter and got him one. Winter softened into early spring the way it always did in Maple Creek, gradually, without announcement. The snow pulling back from the road edges first, then from the yard. Then one morning you looked out the window and the tree line had gone from gray to something almost green. Second Morning Bakery became part of the town the way good places do, not with fanfare but with repetition. Gerald from the hardware store came in on Thursdays for the cardamom coffee. The school bus driver developed a standing order for 2 almond croissants every Friday. Couples came on weekend mornings. Old men came alone with newspapers. Children pressed their faces against the glass case and pointed at things with tremendous seriousness. Celeste served all of them in the same apron with the same unhurried attention. She had restructured her involvement with Monroe Haven enough that Adrian ran the day-to-day with a competence that suggested he had been ready for exactly this responsibility for years and had simply been waiting to be asked. She reviewed reports on Tuesday evenings, took calls when necessary, and made decisions that required her specifically, and let go of the ones that didn't. Darius came into the bakery most mornings before his shift. Not every morning he was careful about the rhythm of it, making sure that what was building between them built at a pace that Naomi could follow and trust. Some days he just got coffee and stayed 10 minutes. Some days he sat at the corner table for an hour. On the days when Celeste wasn't too busy, she sat across from him and they talked about Naomi, about the house, about the things that had happened to each of them in the years before they met on a dark road in a blizzard. He told her about Renee. Not all at once, pieces over weeks, the way you tell something that matters. Celeste listened without rushing toward the end of it. She asked the questions that meant she had actually heard what he said. It was the first time in 2 years that talking about Renee had felt like honoring her rather than reopening something. Naomi's drawings changed. The house was still there, the tree in its spot, but the compositions grew more detailed, more populated. Neighbors, the school bus, the bakery with its wooden sign. The world of the drawings expanded outward, the way a child's world expands when she feels safe enough to look beyond the edges of what she knows. The 3 figures were always there, always together, always with faces. One afternoon in April, Naomi came into the bakery after school and placed a new drawing on the counter in front of Celeste without explanation. Celeste picked it up. It was the house and the bakery side by side, connected by the small road between them. Darius and Naomi stood in front of the house. Celeste stood in front of the bakery, and between them, in the middle of the road, all 3 figures were drawn a second time together in a cluster, facing no particular direction. Just standing there, in the same place at the same time. Celeste looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at Naomi. "Can I keep this one?" she asked. Naomi nodded, like this had always been the plan. That evening, Darius came to walk Naomi home at closing time. He found them at the corner table, Naomi's homework spread out in front of her, Celeste across from her with a pen helping with something. The last of the day's bread was cooling on the rack. The light through the windows was the long, golden kind that belongs to late spring evenings, the kind that makes ordinary things look like they were always meant to be seen this way. Darius stood in the doorway for a moment before either of them noticed him. He thought about the morning he had come downstairs expecting silence and found warmth instead. He thought about how frightened that warmth had made him, how he had stood in his own kitchen and felt something returning to life, and his first instinct had been to protect himself from it. He understood now that he had been wrong about what he was protecting. Naomi looked up. "Dad, Celeste knows how to do long division in a way that actually makes sense." "Does she?" he said. Celeste looked up. Whatever she found in his expression made her smile, that small, real smile that had nothing to do with cameras or boardrooms. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. Outside, Maple Creek settled into its quiet evening, the hardware store going dark, the school bus long done with its rounds, the road between the little wood frame house and the bakery with the hand-painted sign empty and still. Inside, no one was going anywhere. There's something this story keeps coming back to, and it's this. The people who are hardest to love back into life are usually the ones doing all the protecting. Darius wasn't a cold man. He wasn't someone who had stopped caring. He was someone who had cared so much and lost so much that he had confused keeping the door closed with keeping everyone safe. Most of us have done some version of that. Held something at arm's length because letting it close felt too much like asking to be hurt again. Called it wisdom. Called it protecting the people we love. Sometimes it even is those things. But sometimes, and this is the part that's harder to say, sometimes the door we're keeping closed is the one that warmth is trying to come through. Naomi knew it before her father did. An 8-year-old with colored pencils and a sketchbook and a mother's last words in her heart understood something that took Darius months to find his way back to. That staying open is not the same as being reckless. That letting someone in is not a betrayal of everyone you've already loved. That a second morning, a real one, unhurried and honest, is still worth getting up for. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who might need it today. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. There are more stories like this one waiting, the kind that take their time and mean what they say.